welcome back to Walking Down the Manny Road, a new Bolton Wanderers podcast brought to you by Burnden Aces. My name is Chris Mann, and today we delve back into the 90s to speak to a man who represented Bolton between 1992 and 1997. He made 199 appearances for Wanderers during that 5-year spell, scoring 20 goals. He competed in the 1995 Coca-Cola Cup final, and he was part of squads that won promotion to the Premier League on 2 separate occasions. Since retiring from the game, this man has become a well-respected and established coach on the youth scene, first at Wigan Athletic, and more recently back at Wanderers, for whom he has worked since 2008. Our guest on episode 2 of Walking Down the Manny Road, a great big welcome to David Lee. David, how are you?
Very good, thank you. That was some introduction. Well done.
Okay, so we'll get straight into it. So we're in week 7 of lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what have you been doing to keep yourself busy over the past couple of months?
Yeah, well, I'm into my exercise and fitness, so I'm always a bit of an early riser, up at 6 o'clock in the morning, out to do my running. I've set myself a little weight circuit and a pull-up bar. And that kick-starts my day with a physical exercise, something that I've always been used to throughout my playing career as well.
Okay, is it safe to presume at the moment that you've been put on furlough by the club?
Yes, yeah, the academy have been furloughed, yes, so we're all in it together.
Okay, so we learned last week, the back end of last week, that youth and under-23 football has been brought to an end for the season. That brings an end to 99 years of Bolton's reserve team. So with the club announcing plans earlier in the year to drop down to Category 3 Academy, obviously we know your current situation, but what does this mean for you going forward in the future? Because for those who aren't aware, the under-23s at the moment is your role. So with that team not going to be a thing anymore, what does that mean for you?
It's $1 million question at the moment, Chris. There is a restructure at the academy, and until that academy restructure has been done, I really don't know my position at this moment in time. Yes, I'm furloughed at the football club, waiting for the opportunity to speak to the people or the powers that be to see where my future lies. Obviously, I want to stay at the football club. I'm disappointed that the under-23s have been disbanded because personally, I think it's a great route into first-team football. But the football club have the reasons for it, and I respect those reasons. But yeah, I'd love to be continuing at the football club in some capacity. I love being out there coaching the players, and I believe I can bring a lot to the football club and the future of this football club with the younger players coming through the system.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, sticking with the under-23s, you got it then to the Professional Development League title. So again, for those who are unaware, that is the league that the under-23s take part in, and that is run by the Premier League. That particular team featured names such as Connor Hall, Dennis Politic, Liam Edwards, Harry Brockbank, just to name a few. Club's off-field position has obviously brought an end to that at the moment, but at the same time, it perhaps accelerated those names towards the first team a little bit quicker. Who else do you think deserved an opportunity that those 4 names got? And maybe even somebody that's no longer at the club?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, just going back to that squad 2 years ago, it was a fantastic squad of players. Even people like Jake Turner and James Aspinall, who are no longer at the football club, played a major part in that. Jeff King's another one who's gone on to play for Halifax. Jack Ewing, another one who also went on to Halifax Town. Yeah, they're all excellent players, and the camaraderie and the spirit and the drive and the technical ability of those players have all stood them in good stead. And it was a tough league to win. There's a lot of good teams in that Premier League 2 division. And also when we went through to the national final as well, playing against teams like Nottingham Forest. So the players achieved a lot. And yes, it's about developing those players and giving them the opportunity. And throughout that squad, the players that you've named have been forced, or they've earned the recognition to be in the first team. And there's players gone by now. I mean, Jake Turner's now at Newcastle United at the Premier League level. So there's players who are in that squad who are capable of playing first team football. And that's football. Some players get the opportunity. Sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time. Sometimes it might take an injury for someone to get an opportunity. But the majority of that squad who did win those championships a couple of years ago are all going on to play professional football at some capacity. And in an ideal world, you want them all to stay at Bolton Wanderers and come through the system and play in the first team. Many have done that, and many of them have moved on to other clubs. And that's purely because of managerial decisions higher above me, and they're the people who make those decisions. But no, it was a great time for the football club. And again, those players who are now playing out at different levels are doing very, very well.
Okay, so obviously you've just mentioned or spoken about your pride of that group of players a couple of years ago. Going back to last August, the position that the first team was in at the time, again, whether it was deserved or forced upon the club is a debate for each individual person to come up with. Going back to the opening day, 2-0 defeat at Wycombe, all these debuts, I think there was 8 in total. But then skip forward a couple of weeks after that, the 0-0 draw with Coventry, the youngest Bolton team for a league fixture in the history of the club. Some of those who have worked with at under 23 level, some of them dipping down even lower. How much of an input did you have in those teams at the time?
Yeah, it was, throughout the academy, all those players, all the staff, all the players had a major part to play in those boys playing in the first team. And what a credit they were, every single one of them. And that's something that'll be in their memories for a long, long time, and the football club's history as well. The majority of those players were under 18s players, and that was under the guidance of people like Gavin McCann, Nicky Spooner, Jimmy Phillips, the academy manager. And obviously 2 or 3 of them were under 23s players as well, with the likes of Dennis Politic in there. So, yeah, it was a group effort. I don't think anybody takes individual credit. And as staff at the football club, we're not there to take the credit. We're there to get players on the pitch. And those youngsters, and for them, the families, the relations, all the friends, it was a historic moment for them, and they did the club proud. And as you've seen now, people like Roland Darcy, Dennis Politic have been major contenders in the first team this season. And that's what it's all about, developing the players and getting them in that first team environment. And from a crowd and supporters perspective, I don't think there's anything better than seeing homegrown talent playing at the stadium in a first team shirt. And once they've had that taste of playing professional football, they've got to continue with that desire and that hunger and that attitude and application to want to carry on. And the players that do come through the system at this football club have continued to do that. And yeah, it's a proud moment for them, for us as staff, for the town, and for the football club in general.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there about supporters wanting young players in the first team. No, going back to 2016, after Neil Lennon had left, fans had been calling for it for a few months. Unfortunately, the results carried on the way they had been doing. Results at the start of this season weren't the greatest, but again, when you're playing what is essentially a youth team in League One level football, okay, maybe put 2 or 3 of the younger players in, but when you end up with a full 11, there's only going to be one outcome more often than not, isn't there? So, as you said, seeing Dennis Politic, Ronan Darcy, a couple of others, Johan Zuma, staying in and around the first team during the season, that is on merit. And again, it's great to see, and hopefully something, whether in League 1 or 2 next season, hopefully something that can continue. So, going back to the under-23s and your success of a couple of years ago, we've just mentioned a few of the names and how they've done at first team level. How frustrating has it been for you that you've not really been able to build on that success of 2 years ago? Because looking at the league table for this season, adrift quite a long way at the bottom, not scoring many goals, conceding a lot of goals, but you have been left with what is effectively an under-18s team. So again, looking back at 2 years ago, yes, some of the names have gone on to better things. Some other names, not so much. They've left for other clubs, not done very well. But 2 years on, it's quite a rapid decline when you look at what you've been left with in the end.
Yeah, it's. Football comes in success, and it comes in waves of success, and sometimes you've got to go with what the situation brings up for you. And unfortunately, this season, many of the under-23s who would be under-23 players have been cast into the first team environment. Now, from a manager's perspective, if you've got younger players who are going to play in the first team, they've got to train with the first team, and the management have taken all those players. So, effectively, I have not had an under-23s group to coach or train this season. It's been purely those players who are playing in the first team have trained with the first team squad. The under-18s players have then trained with the likes of Gavin McCann and Nicky Spoon at under-18s level, which I've had a look into and watched some time coach with those players. But that middle group has been very, very fragile this season because the manager, out of respect for him, he needs those players, so they have to go up and play with them. And the younger players who train with the under-18, so that middle ground group, then there's never been a training group this season where you can prepare those under-23 squad players for each game that you play in. I was literally given a group of players on maybe a Sunday evening or sometimes a Monday morning before we play on a Monday afternoon, so there was no preparation. So the results have looked poor, but in realistic terms, you can't blame the players, you can't blame myself, you can't blame the club. It was the circumstances where those players are either playing for the under-18s on a Saturday morning, they were involved with the first team on a Saturday afternoon, or if they were involved, then they would play on a Monday. So it was a group of players that was thrown together, usually 10 or 11 o'clock on a Monday morning, and then they were expected to play on a Monday afternoon or a Monday evening. And to be fair to the younger players, who the under-18s players who I'm talking about, they've played on a Saturday, they've then played on a Monday for the under-23s, and it's been a huge ask and a demand for them when they're physically not ready for it, and playing against mature players who are 22 and 23 years of age. So initially, physically, they're at a disadvantage, but it's been a great learning curve for them, even though the results haven't gone well for them. And some of those players have come through that system, the likes of Roman Darcy and Dennis Politic, are thriving now on the experience they've had at that level, being dipped into first team level and done very, very well. And again, earlier in the conversation, we talk about the importance of bringing younger players through into the first team. It's not been ideal the way it's been done this season, but because of the circumstances and the embargo on the management only having 23 first team players, that's the way it's got to be. And we've all had to dig in and work hard and make sure we do put teams out under 18s level, under 23s level, and most importantly at first team level.
I think, again, you just mentioned there about how busy it's been for some of those players. So playing under-18s football on a Saturday morning, playing under-23s on a Monday afternoon. There are a few things people may not have seen. I picked up on it on Twitter a couple of months ago. I believe it's something to do with the scholarship, the terms and conditions of each player's scholarships. They're given an education as well. And I know there was a few players that were doing work experience with the media team at the club as well. So on top of training for football, they're playing those 2 games in 3 days. They've also got their everyday life to contend with as well, in terms of getting those qualifications should things not work out. So again, you mentioned how busy it was. Well, we saw that at the start of the season when the first team games were getting called off because the official line was that you were using rules from the FA's academy rule book about so many games in so many days. And in the end, we got first team games called off for that, didn't we?
Yeah. It was a huge physical and mental demand on those younger players. And yes, everybody only sees the finished article of a match day of the 90 minutes, but the preparation for those players to have to train, they also have to have their important education, which is a massive factor at the football club within the academy. Because we all know the fallout in football. They all want to be footballers, but realistically, if they're not going to make that grade as a professional player, they need at least their academic qualifications to back them up, to move them on in future life. So, yes, you're juggling training schedules, you're juggling travelling, home life, family life, and the education, as well as the mental stimulation and drain that it takes out on those players. So those players deserve a lot of credit for what they've gone through. If I do an example of a week for them, they would play on a Saturday morning for the under-18s. They'd come in and do a cool down on a Sunday morning in preparation to then play on a Monday. They'd be back in the club on a Tuesday for a training session. They'd be at education Tuesday afternoon. They'd be at education on a Wednesday. They'd train again Thursday and train again Friday in preparation for the game on a Saturday. So it was a 7-day-a-week process for those players. And until this epidemic came along, obviously they were doing that on a daily basis. So physically and mentally, it's been really, really difficult for the players. But again, they've come through it great, and hopefully with the experiences that they've gained, that'll stand them in good stead when football starts again.
Just while you were talking about that, then something in my memory sort of stands out, and I can't remember whether it was players that drop out at 17, 18 years old or players at the end of the career, but something in my memory seems to stick out about Dougie Freedman having some sort of programme for, like I say, people at 18 or possibly at the end of the careers. I can't quite remember. Something to do with financial planning and getting them on that career ladder. That is going back a few years, so we'll have to do a little bit more research on that one to see what we can find.
Yeah, but I mean, just going on to that point, through the education, and Lee Wood, who is the Academy Educational Welfare, he puts workshops on for the players. So it's not just about the education, it's about other life skills that the players have to come to terms with and learn with, about mortgages, pensions, cars, insurance, tax, all the things that you need in life. At 16 years of age, you don't have that education, and yet whilst you're still trying to be a footballer, all those pointers are put into their education. And as I said, Lee's put lots of workshops on this season where the players are learning all about contracts and tax, insurance, all those things that I've literally just spoke about. So it's a learning curve for those players. So even if they're not going to make footballers, we make sure when they leave this football club, they go with an education and an outlook on life with some familiarities that they will need in the future lives. And I think it's important, because once they walk away from football, if they've nothing to back them up, then it's a hard slog and it's a hard life. So we are educating them and hopefully putting them on a path. And my philosophy is, when they come into the football club, they leave a better footballer, but more importantly, they leave as a better person and a more experienced person for that. It's a long, long life ahead of them when they do come away from the football club.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to the actual football now then. So in your 12 years, I believe it is, back at Bolton, you've seen the likes of Zach Clough, Josh Vella, Rob Holding, Luke O'Connell. They've reached first team level and they've been moved on for different reasons. Most Wanderers fans believe the fees that were received, aside from Josh Vella because he left on a free, but most Wanderers fans believe the fees were a little bit below market value. And again, there's obviously different reasons for that. Maybe aside from Rob Holding on this one, because I don't think it's fair to tag in with this one, but where do you stand on the fees that were received? Do you think they were of value, below value? And does the lack of success elsewhere surprise you? And that's where I think Holding deserves to be left out of it. Obviously, Arsenal regular until an injury, he's won an FA Cup, so we'll leave him aside for that one.
Yeah, it's sometimes when you're at the football club, as you are at Bolton Wanderers, if you're doing well, people are going to watch you. And once they've watched you and they've made a decision to come and buy you, the financial side of it, the football staff do not get involved in it. I've never had any dealings whatsoever with, yes, it should be a set fee for this player, he's worth this value. That's something that the club as managers or directors and owners of the football club, I've always left it for them to do. So I've never really had any input into fees of what players are worth. Now, a player is only worth what someone is prepared to pay for them. And if a football club can come to an agreement with another football club for a value of a player and it goes through, fantastic. And it is about opinions. You talk about Robert, he went for a few £1 million, and he's a genuine first team player now at a Premier League club, and a Premier League club who are probably one of the best in the country. So if you look at it from that term, the longevity of it, it was probably worth a lot more money. But at the time, that was the fee that they paid for him. Whether clubs can have incentives built into fees, where if he plays so many appearances for Arsenal, then they might get a few more quid. And it's all relevant at the time. I mean, Zach then went to Nottingham Forest, and unfortunately for Zach, he was fantastic at Bolton. But when he went to Nottingham Forest, one manager brought him in, and as he came in, that manager then left. So then Zach had to try and prove himself to another manager. And if that manager hasn't brought Zach Clough in, then he might not be his type of player. So it doesn't make Zach a bad player by going to Nottingham Forest. Sometimes a manager doesn't fancy him, or he doesn't fit into the system that he plays. And if you're not careful, you can fall away out of football. And unfortunately, Zach at the moment hasn't been playing any football for Nottingham Forest. So you lose your confidence, you lose your own desire and your passion and enthusiasm. And then it needs somebody really to get hold of that player and nurture him, put an arm around him, coach him, make him a better player, and bring him back to how he was. And unfortunately, whilst he's been at Nottingham Forest, the value of the player will have gone down because he's not playing football. So it's a frustrating time for him. But you never know, he might play a couple of under-23s games. Someone might fancy him and say, well, we'll take him. And if he starts playing on a regular basis, he might then increase the value of his, or a value fee, what people are prepared to pay. So football's funny. You can be fantastic at one club, you can have a great experience and go somewhere else and it doesn't work out for you. And the value that people put on you are the opinions and valuations where they come from managers and directors of the football clubs who are prepared to pay that money. So with Robert, we did great. With Zach, we did great. We got a lot of money into the football club. Will they demand those fees if they move on again? I'm certain Robert will, but at this moment in time, Zach won't until he starts playing football again.
Yeah, and I was listening to an interview with Zach Clough through the Line of Vienna Suite, another website that does a podcast for Bolton. And he just sounded really fed up. He's got another 12 months on his contract. He's hardly played for 2 years. Like you say, the situation when he did sign, the manager leaving pretty much straight away, has not helped him. He's had an injury, a couple of injuries even. He came back on loan to Bolton, never really got a look in. I think, as you say, he just needs a run of games, possibly even a pre-season, which at this point, who knows if players are even going to get one of those.
Yeah, but you know what, Chris, just to interrupt you there, and this is where I find one of my skills is it's about man management. It's about getting hold of those individual players and making them believe and working them hard, telling them when they're doing well, telling them when they're not doing well, and getting the respect to that player and getting the best out of them. And I believe when Zach was here with the under-18s at the football club, and I worked a lot of time with him, I got the best out of him. But he's always going to be a good player. But as a manager, you've got to see those strengths and weaknesses in the players and put that confidence and that ability that's there into fruition week in, week out. And unfortunately for Zach, he's gone somewhere, and he probably needed someone like myself who'd worked with him, who knows how he ticks, to get him working again and believe in him and put him on the football pitch at Nottingham Forest, and he would have been a revelation and a hit. Same with Robert. You know his strengths, you know his weaknesses. And it's about that individual man management of players and looking after them and extracting every ounce of energy and enthusiasm and passion. And the technical and the tactical side of it will come as well. But it is about those individuals and knowing how to get the best out of them. And if you can do that with a group of players, you've got a fantastic chance. And unfortunately for Zach, he needs to be back with someone like me who believes in him, who could give him that opportunity and that pedestal to get him back playing again. And that throughout my career as a coach and a manager, I don't profess to be the best coach in the world, but I'm good at individuality and recognising what that player needs and getting the best out of them. And that's what Zach needs. He needs an arm around him, someone to believe in him and get him back playing football, as most players do. And if you can get into the mindset of each individual player and get the best out of them, learn about them, learn about the family, learn about the brothers and the sisters, learn about their own lifestyle, what makes them tick, what gets them down, and motivate those players and extract everything, and you'll have a winner. And do you know what? I did that with the under-23s, and I am passionate about it. And on the 23 level, I knew every single one of those players. I knew who the parents were, the brothers and sisters, how the lifestyles were. And it showed at the end of it, throughout the season, they won the Premier League 2 and they won the national final. And it's about being able to develop and manage and get the best out of players.
Okay, so while we're talking about your own credentials, that leads us up perfectly onto the next question. So last summer you were quite vocal about the managerial position at the first team level and your own desire to take that role on. Nobody knows which league we'll be in next season, but if the opportunity came up one more time, is it something you'd still like to take on? And what have you made of the job under very difficult circumstances that Keith Hill has done so far?
Well, in respect of the manager, Keith Hill, he's had a difficult start because of the 12 points deduction. It was always going to be difficult for him to come in. He's brought his own players in. He's tried to get a winning formula. And he's had good times. He's had indifferent performances. And that's the players. That's not Keith Hill's fault. That's sometimes the players are not performing. But from a perspective of, would I like to be a manager of a football club? Of course I would. Yeah, I'm in football because I love it. Now, that's not saying I want to go and pinch Keith Hill's job. That's not about that. I want to be a manager. I think I've got the credentials. I think I've got the experience now. Whether it be here or at another football club, I want to be a manager. And if you didn't have that passion and that self-belief and desire to do the job, then you shouldn't be in the job. And I'm not trying to push anybody out of the position. If an opportunity come up to be a manager, gosh, in an ideal world, everybody wants to manage Bolton Wanderers who've played for the football club because it's such a fantastic club. You've got fantastic supporters. You've got a stadium that is class. And the people around the town, the people who work for the football club, what better place to want to work?
So you just mentioned there about how pretty much anybody that has played for the club would like to come back and be manager. So we'll move on to your time as an actual player at the club now, because you were at the club during an era of success. Obviously not one we're in at the moment, but because it was successful, it's one that people look back fondly at. So just to give a few bit of an introduction as to how the move came about. 1992, you were at Southampton. You joined Bolton on loan initially before completing a permanent deal for, reported at the time, you can correct us if this is wrong, the deal was £275,000. With the Premier League in its infancy, you dropped to the third tier, swapping a strike force of Matt Le Tissier and Alan Shearer for one of Andy Walker and John McGinley. So how did that move come about?
Yeah, I got bought by Southampton from Bury, and I went down there to try and, initially, I was told to go and try and replace Matthew Le Tissier through Ian Branfoot, who was the manager. There was talk of Le Tissier going on to Chelsea or places like Spurs, and Ian Branfoot bought me to go and replace Matthew Le Tissier. When I got down there, I played, I think it was 24 games. I thought I did okay, had some assists. enjoyed my time down there. But I always found that Matthew Le Tissier didn't want to leave the football club, and it was Matthew Le Tissier to play, or myself. And Matthew Le Tissier was a fantastic footballer. He was God in the Southampton eyes, and I knew I was never really going to get that opportunity to play on a regular basis. So I was playing in the reserve league or reserve game, and Bruce Rioch came to watch the game down at Roadsea, which is the training ground, against Millwall. I played very, very well. I scored a goal, and the following day there was a phone call to the football club asking if I'd like to go out on loan. And I was a footballer. If you're not playing first team football and you're playing development football or reserve team football as it was, it's not the same. You want to be playing in a first team environment. And again, as we spoke early on in the conversation about Zach and someone believing in you and wanting you, and Bruce Rioch did that. He gave me a lifeline. As soon as I met the man, I knew he was someone who would get the best out of me. And given the opportunity to come back to the northwest of England and play first team football, irrelevant of whether it was Championship, League One, League Two, or Premier League, or whatever, however you want to state it, it was first team football. And when you're given an opportunity, you've got to take it. And I got that opportunity at Bolton Wanderers, and the infrastructure, the family side of it, the actual ability of the team players, the management, it all seemed to fit into place for me. And I felt wanted. I loved the club. I loved the people I worked for. I was in an environment that wanted me to go into work every day and prove. And the success obviously went on for the next 5 years, working under a manager of Bruce Rioch and a coaching staff of Colin Todd, and working with players who wanted to work hard for each other. And once you gain that little bit of success, you want more of it. And Bruce Rioch and the staff and the players and the club, we got on a roll where we wanted more and more of it. And it was a fantastic time. I loved every minute of it.
And you mentioned there, obviously, at Southampton, Matt Le Tissier possibly leaving, in the end didn't. If you're going to play second fiddle to someone, Matt Le Tissier is not a bad one, is he? So yeah. Fair play to you for making that decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so you played 40 times in your debut campaign at Burnden Park, scoring 6 goals as the club won promotion to what is now known as the Championship, so the first division at the time. A night everybody remembers from that season, though, isn't a league game. It's an FA Cup win at Anfield in January 1993. So to this day, players and fans still describe that as your best performance in a Bolton shirt. Do you agree with that? Just talk us through that night in your own words.
Yeah, I do agree with it. I've never been one for the individuality of it. For me, for the football club, it put us back on the map. That evening, going to Anfield, everybody had written us off. No one had given us a chance of even getting a goal, never mind getting a result. And it was written in the stars for the football club, because we went there, we created history, we played well individually and as a team. The 8,500, 9,000 Bolton Wanderers supporters there on that night, and to a day never goes by without somebody mentioning it to myself, or I hear someone talking about it. What an occasion to go to Anfield and win 2-0 and to beat them in the manner that we did. It was no surprise to us as players, because we had that confidence and we had a manager who put that belief into us to say, yeah, go and do it. And we did it, and what a night. And yeah, it was probably my best performance, but from a club's perspective, it got people talking about the football club, and it elevated us to levels where they deserve to be because of the football that we played.
And obviously we had a chance to repeat that a few years ago when we took 4,000 or 5,000 fans for another FA Cup tie, and I think we got a goalless draw on that occasion. But again, it just shows people from different generations just have those same memories and want things to repeat themselves, and the good times will come back. So moving on to the following year, your second season, 93-94, you played 56 times as we finished 15th in our first campaign back in Division 1. But again, that season's best known for cup games. This time it was Everton, Arsenal, Aston Villa. So what are your biggest takeaways? We've covered Liverpool now, so we'll move on from that. But what are your biggest takeaways from those white-hot years?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the cup run that we had, but I was just laughing there because you said I played 56 games. Mm-hmm. Players don't play that in 2 years now, do they? No. And I think that was down to the success of the club. We were playing in FA Cup games, League Cup games, league games, and I think we had 62 or 63 games that season. But to play in 56 of them meant that we were being successful, and obviously individually I was doing well to maintain my position in the team. And the highlights of that season were the likes of going to Everton and beating them at Burnden Park. Then we beat Aston Villa at home, I think, and Alan Stubbs scored a goal. And then we went down to Highbury, didn't we? And we played Arsenal. And what an occasion that was. The Invincibles team down there with some fantastic players in it. Lee Dixon, Steve Bold, Adams. I mean, they had an array of players who, again, we were probably written off before we even got on the bus to set on our way down there. But to go down there and win in the manner and play in the manner that we did, again, it goes down in history. And it was one of those times in my career where we had that self-belief, thinking, do you know what, we can go to Highbury and beat these or give them a good game. Sometimes you need a little bit of luck. But we had the quality of John McGinley, Tony Kelly, Andy Walker, Jason McAteer scoring goals. And we had that self-belief and we thought we could do something, and we wanted to create a winning mentality at the football club. And Bruce, as a manager, did that, and as players, we did that. So we didn't fear anybody. And yeah, great times. Always remember them. Always talk about them. Talk about it with passion and pride and enthusiasm, because it was a lifestyle that we loved being involved with, and we worked hard and we got the success.
Okay, so that same season, and whether it's success or not, I'll leave you to decide this one. The history books show Bolton's first European game was against Lokomotiv Plovdiv in 2005. But from players of your generation, you could perhaps say Bolton's first European game was against Tranmere Rovers. Talking about the Anglo-Italian Cup.
Yeah.
Aside from the games against the English teams, we had 2 games over in Italy, one against Pisa and one against Ascoli, which, looking back through the record books, you weren't involved in that one. But you did play in the winning Pisa. So what was that competition like to play in?
Yeah, I think we were doing well in the league, and I think if you'd have got in the mind of Bruce Rioch, yes, he loved winning every game, but I think playing in that Anglo-Italian Cup was a little bit of a distraction for him, and he would tinker with the team and he'd change 1 or 2 personnel or change the pattern of play that we had. And I don't think he could believe it, or he was a bit disappointed when we actually qualified to go and play over in Italy. Yes, we wanted to have that winning mentality, but it impeded on what our main concern was doing well in the cup games in this league, in England, in the FA Cup and the League Cup, and obviously doing well in the league itself. So it was a bit of a distraction. But again, it was an experience for us to go over and play over in Pisa. You play against foreign mentality players, and it's a learning curve for you. So it was another string to our bows about playing professional football in different countries. And yeah, it was a great experience, even though it was a little bit of a hindrance on the league campaign that the manager set out for us trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think from fans of my own generation, I think every other generation as well, we're definitely not having it that our first European games at Tranmere. So we'll stick with Plovdiv.
Yeah, it sounds better, yeah.
Okay, moving on to the following season, then 94-95. We've already mentioned 92-93, you made 40 appearances. 93-94, you made 56 appearances. Well, this time around, you made another 49. So what we're looking at there, probably closing in on 140, 150 games in 3 years.
Yeah.
So 49 appearances, as we say, that season. You reached the Coca-Cola Cup final. We won promotion to the Premier League. Again, another successful campaign. But those 2 afternoons at Wembley, can you compare and contrast those for us, especially as on an individual basis for yourself, sitting out the playoff final win as well?
Yeah. Well, obviously, everybody's dream as a footballer is to play at Wembley. And to play in a major cup final against one of the biggest teams in Europe, Liverpool, was a dream come true. We didn't disgrace ourselves on the day. I thought we played very well. I remember Alan Thompson scoring late on, and I think another 5 or 10 minutes, we'd have probably given them a little bit more of a scare. But Liverpool set out to win the game, and I remember Steve McManaman being fantastic that day and scoring 2 goals, and rightly so, winning man of the match. But the experience of being involved in the preparation and the build-up to a cup final, it's something that lives with me for the rest of my life and my career. And the success the football club had was because of the hard work of the staff and the players and the supporters we had. And then to emulate that and go on and play in the playoff final and go and beat Reading in the manner that we did was an even greater achievement. Very disappointed that I broke 3 metatarsals in the semi-final against Wolves. But that just showed the character of the squad and the in-depth of the squad, where when I couldn't play in the final, you bring people like Fabian De Freitas in and they make a difference. And we ended up winning a fantastic game of football. And I remember I was on crutches, and I ran onto the pitch at the end of it, and I was in tears, and I couldn't believe what we'd actually achieved. And it wasn't just on that game, but if you was to write a story or a fairy tale, that's how you'd have it, where you'd get through to a final, you'd go 2-0 down, you'd get Keith Brannigan to save a penalty, and then you'll turn it around and win the game and get promotion to the Premier League. And I think it was testament to the supporters, the management, the players, that football team and that football squad and that football club. They deserved it, because for the last 5 years we'd worked so hard to get to where we wanted to be, and we actually got there and achieved it, and to be a Premiership football team. And in the manner that we did, it was fairy tale stuff, and it's something that lives long in my memory, and people still talk about it to this day. And people like Fabian De Freitas, cool as a cucumber. And I remember his interview after the game, I just did my best. And that just summed up the footballers that were at the club at the time under Bruce. All level-headed, all hard-working, and wanted to achieve success. Not for us individually, but for a football club and the fantastic supporters that this football club had and always will have.
So for those of us, just go back to the Liverpool game, for those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube at the minute, you can't fail to notice behind David Lee's head are Bolton and Liverpool shirts framed up on the wall. Strategic placement, we think, but there we go. If you're listening to the podcast, go and check it out on Facebook and YouTube. While you were talking then, just crunch some numbers really quickly. In those 3 seasons, it was 145 appearances that you made. Current footballers would probably start crying for different reasons over that, and I bet you were just wondering if you could play more. So fair play to you for those numbers, because I don't think that's something you'll see too often these days.
No, do you know what, Chris? I think when you're in a team of footballers and you've got that winning mentality and you've got a manager who's driving you on day after day, you want to be a part of it. And if you want to be a part of it, you've got to work hard in training, you've got to conduct yourself right, you've got to live the right lifestyle. And then if you do all those things and you get a little bit of luck and you play on a regular basis and you stay fit, it's what you achieve and it's what you want to do. And every player and every squad member in Bruce Riott's squad wanted to be in that football team on a Saturday or a Tuesday night, because they wanted to taste that success, and it was an absolute pleasure to be involved in it. And you knew if you were out the team for any reason, whether you got booked or sent off or you had an injury, you found it very, very difficult to get back into that team. So by living the lifestyle, by training hard, you got your rewards and played every week.
Yeah, great stuff. So just keep playing until you can't play anymore.
Yeah,
Never mind
yeah.
2 games in 4 days.
Yeah, no, gosh, we love playing Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, and the more games you play, you realise you were being successful because you had all those games to play in. And I think by the end of my career, I think I played about 550 games, and I felt like I could play another 550 because you just wanted to play football and enjoy it.
There's a few people at the moment that think you could still play a game of football. So
I'd love to be given an opportunity.
Okay, so after 145 games, as we just mentioned, in those 3 years, we got back to the top table of English football 3 years after he'd left Southampton of the Premier League at the time for the 3rd tier. We had a change in management around that time as well. Bruce Rioch got himself the job at Arsenal. In came Roy McFarland and Colin Todd. And things seemed to change a little bit for you around that time. You only played 23 times in the Premier League that season, of which only 13 were from the start. And names such as Scott Sellers and Sasa Churchick were brought in as well. We were relegated that season without much of a fight. We probably could argue we weren't quite ready for that final step of the Premier League. How frustrating was it watching on while those on the pitch struggled to match the quality of those very top teams?
Yeah, it's like how we spoke earlier on in the conversation about having a manager who believes in you. And once Bruce had moved on and Colin and Roy took charge, I obviously wasn't their player and the club were moving on to a different era. And when that happens, you're not forced out, but they bring other quality players in who they think can adapt better and play in a system that they want to. And they have to put their own mark on it. And for everything that I possibly could have achieved and did, I worked hard and continued to train hard. But if the manager doesn't pick you, you can't do any more. And it was my time probably to move on then. And obviously at the end of that season, I did move on to Wigan Athletic because I wanted to play first team football. And the club were going into a new era. I wasn't part of those plans. Yes, it hurt and it still hurts to this day, but you have to move on to let other people progress the football club, and that's what those players who came in did. And I continue my career somewhere else. So that's football for you. I gave it my best shot. In my opinion, I think I was good enough to be at the football club, but from a managerial perspective, they had decisions to make. I respect those decisions, and I had to move on. And that's life, and you get on with it. Don't sulk about it. You move on and you carry on.
And just to steal a quote from yourself earlier on, it is a game of opinions, and obviously one person's opinion is different from the next person. We'll touch on that move to Wigan in a moment because, surprisingly, you've got your ears wrong there. You didn't leave us after the Premier League season. The season you've missed out is the best one probably that anyone could have had. 96-97. Last season at Burnden Park. So we had 98 points, 100 goals. Yeah. You made 31 appearances that season. Obviously, a few more, taking into account there are more games in the Championship or First Division at the time. But again, only 18 starts. We stormed the title that season. So after the failings of the previous year, dropping out of the Premier League, perhaps just not quite ready for that level, what happened in that final year at Burnden Park as things just seemed to click?
Yeah, it was, again, that winning mentality. I think once you'd had a taste of being in the top level and coming out of it, you want to get straight back in it. And we all knew it was going to be the last season at Burnden Park, and for a football club, it deserved to finish on a high. And it couldn't have gone any better, could it? Because the last game of the season, we beat Charlton and John McGinley scores the last goal at Burnden Park. Again, it was written in the stars. But it wasn't luck. It was pure hard work from people throughout the season to get us into that situation. And John scoring that last goal against Charlton Athletic at the Burnden Park. It was fitting, and a sad day because it holds and had held so many fond memories for the supporters of past and players of presently when we were in that era. And it was a sad day to go, but what a way to finish and leave Burnden Park before they went to the Reebok.
I think obviously if you look at the two squads, 95-6 and 6-7, if you put them side by side, I think you could make a fair argument for the First Division team beating the Premier League team, because as good as names such as Sasa Churchick, Alan Stubbs were, after they were moved on, they were replaced by names such as, well, Chris Fairclough stepped up an extra gear. We brought in Per Fransen, Michael Johansson.
Yeah.
They weren't bad players at all. So moving on to the end of, obviously, of your time at Bolton now, you've made it back to the top division 6 years, I believe, after leaving Southampton when you were first in the Premier League, or the First Division as it was at the time. So you've made it back to the top, with this time the club accepting £250,000 fee for you from Wigan Athletic. You've already mentioned game of opinions. There's no point sulking about things. Just get on with it. Go and play football. After dropping away from the Premier League previously, not having a great time of it in 95-6, and then seeing that opportunity in 97-98 fade away, was a fresh start something you were looking for at the time, or was that decision just taken out of your hands, obviously by Bolton accepting the fee?
Yeah, I think to a point, it was a double-edged sword, really. Yeah, I mean, the fee for the football club to take that money was inviting for them. And again, I knew I'd served my time at the football club. No one wants to leave a place where you've had success. But again, as we spoke about earlier in the conversation, if the opportunity from a management or staff is not there for the player, then they've got to do what's right best for themselves and move on. And I did need a new challenge, and my challenge was to go to Wigan Athletic and have 3 seasons there, and enjoyed it. I'd always in the back of my mind knew that when I was coming towards the end of my career, I wanted to do the coaching side of it. So when I was at Wigan Athletic, yes, I was coaching. I was coaching whilst I was at Bolton in the School of Excellence there, but I always had one eye on learning the trade. And when I finished my career, over 3 years at Wigan Athletic, I went straight into the coaching as the under-18s coach under the ruling of Paul Jewell. So even though I didn't want to leave Bolton Wanderers, I knew I had to, and I made the right decision then by continuing my coaching in the evenings, still playing football, still enjoying it, but moving on from, or in a transitional period from the football side of it into the coaching side. So in the long term, it was the right decision to make.
Okay, so after 3 relatively successful years at Wigan, a spell where you won the Football League Trophy Auto Windscreens, I think it was called at the time. Yeah. You brought your playing career to a close after short spells at Blackpool, Carlisle and Morecambe, and then you stepped back into coaching, as we've just spoken about, with Wigan. If there is one thing you miss about playing, though, what is it?
I think it's the build-up to the games, the preparation of training, and wanting to prove yourself against the opposition on a weekly basis. There is no better feeling than walking out on a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday evening when the crowd are there and you want to perform and prove to yourself that you've still got the ability or wanting to win, and have that desire and passion to want to prove it to the opposition and entertain the supporters. And the second best thing to being a footballer is being involved in the coaching side of it, because all those experiences that you have as a player, you can then throw those experiences onto the younger players who you were coaching, and you're still involved in that day-to-day football environment. So there is a bit of a contrast from the football side to the coaching side of it, but for me, it's the next best thing to actually playing on a Saturday. And the sense of achievement you get when you've worked with these players and you see them achieve their goals on a Saturday or a Tuesday or whenever they turn out, It makes you proud, and it makes you believe that your thoughts and your sentiments and your attitudes towards football and what you want to achieve are achievable, but through somebody else's shoes when they go out there and perform on a Saturday.
Okay, so we're starting to come to a close now. One of the final questions that I'm going to throw at you. You proved yourself during your playing career that you weren't afraid of dropping down a level or two. So from the Premier League to Division 3 at the time, it would have been League 1 these days.
Yeah.
There are lots and lots of players at Premier League clubs now that are just happy to sit on the bench, sit in the stands and take the money. But as a man who twice left clubs from the top tier to the third tier, what would your advice be to any player, young or not, who perhaps is not getting the game time they think that they deserve?
I think you've got to go and test yourself and prove yourself, because if you don't, and you just become a player who's on the periphery of first team but never really plays on a regular basis, go and prove to people that you can play at a level. Don't be disheartened and don't be embarrassed thinking, oh, I've got to drop down a level. Because believe me, when you drop out of Championship or League or Premiership football and you think it's going to be easy playing at a lower league, it's not. It's harder and it's tougher and it's more demanding. So don't be happy to be a footballer who plays 10, 15 games a season. Go somewhere and play 30 or 40 games a season and test yourself. And if you're good enough, you will then get that opportunity to prove yourself somewhere else or at a higher level. As you said, players now, and I do understand the rotation in systems, and players don't always get the opportunity, but always want to play in the first team. Don't be happy sat on the bench, coming on as a sub, or just being on the periphery. Because once you've got that taste of playing on a regular basis, it becomes infectious and you want to do it on a regular basis. These younger players who are earning probably big money don't really want to go and test themselves to a point where they have to do it on a weekly basis. And it's the best players in the world who test themselves, who can do it week in, week out. Look at Steven Gerrard when he was at Man United. Look at Ryan Giggs. Look at David Beckham. Look at Paul Scholes. Look at Roy Keane. All players who did it week in, week out, even though financially they didn't need the financial side of it. They were made for lives with the money that they made, but they had that passion and desire and attitude and winning mentality to want to do it day in, day out, week in, week out. And those are the players you talk about now. And even though they've finished their careers, you talk about them because of the success that they had. Look at Ronaldo, 35 years of age, still playing at the highest level of European football, and can still do it for another few years, in my opinion, because they have that passion and desire to want to go and play football on a regular basis. And if I've got any advice for young players, when you become professional players, don't jump into the lifestyle of being professional players and thinking, oh, I've made it now. Strive to be better and better, and you will be better. And that's the advice I give to players.
Okay, so we'll end with a little quick fire Q&A now. I've got 4 questions. Your answers can only be from your time at Bolton. Okay, so the first one, I think the obvious answer to this one, but I want you to confirm it. Best manager?
Bruce Rioch, without a shadow of a doubt.
I think we covered that one enough earlier on to know the reasons why. Best player?
At Bolton?
Yeah, at Bolton.
I've got 2. Because as a player, I could only achieve what I wanted to achieve if people give me that opportunity. And as a midfield player, Tony Kelly, he knew exactly where I was on the football pitch. If he gave me the ball, I knew I could then feed John McGinley to score goals. So with Tony Kelly in midfield, giving me the opportunity to get the ball or putting the ball in an area where I could do my stuff and cross and deliver, and knowing someone will put the ball in the back of the net, knowing that if Tony Kelly, myself and John McGinley were there, we were going to score goals. And if I provided the ammunition for John McGinley to score goals, I knew he would. And every time I put an opportunity on the plate for him or in an area, he'd score a goal. But I was reliant on people like Tony Kelly who could pick a pass and find me. So for me, it's Tony Kelly and it's John McGinley.
Okay, so sticking with players, but this time on the opposing teams, who was the best opponent you came up against?
I used to love playing against Stuart Pearce because he was trying to be intimidating, he was physical, he was strong, he was aggressive, he was a good footballer. He mentally tried to get into your head, but I used to love testing myself against him. And I had a lot of success against him, especially when he was at Nottingham Forest, when I was at Southampton, and when I was at Bolton as well. But I think the most difficult player was Nigel Winterburn, because he was quick, he was agile, he could deal with the ball. I found myself a pacey player, but Nigel Winterburn was also matching me for the pace-wise. So it was always difficult to play against him. But again, you have to challenge yourself and test yourself against the best players. So from a physical point of view, not being the biggest lad, to play against someone physically strong like Stuart Pearce was a great opportunity for me and a challenge. And then to play against a defender who was sharp, had agility, was agile and quick, was another question that I had to ask myself. How do I beat a player like that? And those two players were probably the hardest players I played against.
And the final one then, considering you only had 5 years at Bolton, there's quite a big list to choose from here, but your favourite memory?
My favourite memory has got to be signing for Bruce Rioch after coming away from Southampton and coming to a place where I instantly knew that I was wanted, and I was working within a football club of people where it made me happy. And when it makes you happy, you give your all. And when Bruce Rioch signed me, I knew I wanted to give every ounce I had for Bruce, for my family, and for the football club and the supporters. And that is my fondest memory about signing for Bolton Wanderers, knowing I was wanted and I could give something back for everything that they were going to do for me.
Okay, so after 5 years as a player and another 12 years, hopefully, and counting as a member of staff at the club, I want to give a big thank you to David Lee. If you are watching on burndenaces.co.uk, make sure you subscribe to us on Facebook at facebook.com/burndenaces. We are also on YouTube. If you just type in Walking Down the Manny Road, you will find us there. If you are listening to the podcast, again, make sure you subscribe. We are now available on Apple Podcasts for those of you on iPhone and iPad devices. We are on Google Podcasts for those of you with Androids. And we are now on Spotify too. Hit the buttons, watch us, listen on the go. Thank you for listening. I've been Chris Mann. Thank you again to David Lee. This is Walking Down the Manny Road, and we will see you next time.